worksheet. I don't think it gets used enough or used properly enough. And so we thought we'd put together just a really high-level review of what the planning worksheet does, its purpose, and hopefully tweak your interest a little bit about the potential for actually using it in your business if you're not today. If you are, maybe there's a few other things that maybe you didn't think about in terms of business process that we can get you to take a look at. So give me a second here. There we go. So our agenda today is, why would you use the planning worksheet? We want to talk a little bit about what it can do and the ways you can use it. We're just going to give a quick overview of some critical screens. Primarily, it's going to be about manufacturing setup and the item card. These are two screens that those settings have a profound impact on how the planning worksheet is going to come up with the information it provides you for better running your business, doing purchase orders, doing manufacturing orders better, assembly orders, transfers, all of those things that it can do. Then we will actually go into NAV. I'll hop out of the PowerPoint. We'll go into NAV and we'll actually run the planning worksheet just a couple of times. We'll point out some features that you may or may not be aware of. And at the end, we'll certainly take any questions that you may have. I will also have a link to what I consider to be one of the better books on manufacturing and NAV. It does work, it's written with 2013 in mind, but the changes between 2013 and 2016 in manufacturing, while they're there, they're not profound, and so a lot of people have been able to use this book to help them with their manufacturing and get answers to planning and inventory control and better use of that. So let's just talk a little bit about why you would use the planning worksheet. When you're in business, you all know the deal. How do I know what I need to buy or what do I need to manufacture prior to actually getting it going for this week? When do I want to know that information? How far out do I need to look? How do I gather that information? The point here is you got a lot of things that are affecting what you need to buy, what you need to manufacture. Sales orders, that's just demand. Hey, I've got this. Somebody ordered 15 of them. I need to build 15. Well, do I have them in stock? Don't I have them in stock? If I have them in stock, maybe I don't want to draw all 15 down, so I want to be able to build more. Your inventory settings are going to make that determination for you. Is this an order by order item? I only want to build it when I have orders for it. Is it a maximum quantity? Look, I always want to have it on stock, but I never want to have more than 500. Is it a lot for lot? Meaning, look, basically just when I get below a certain reorder point, build me another 50. Those are all features and functionality that is built into NAV that comes back and tells you this is what I need to work with. This is what I need to purchase. This is what I need to manufacture. It's going to look at existing work orders that are available, that are currently in process. It's going to look at any assembly orders you have out there. It's going to look at demand coming from service orders. It's going to look at purchase orders. So it's going to go through all the features in your system that affect your inventory. And then it's going to come up with a worksheet that says, all right, based on everything you've got in here, all the settings that you've done, and your current demand, and one thing I didn't list here, if you have it in there, forecast, here's what I think you need to build, or here's what I think you need to purchase. And you'll see as we get into this, it's also going to tell you, look, you've got a PO out there for 40 pieces. You just got an order in and you need another 20. You can, depending on how you have it set, it may just come up and tell you, bump that up to 60, and you'll be fine. Or it may come up and say, look, you need to add another PO into the system for another 20 because you don't need those for another 3 weeks. But the planning worksheet is doing the heavy lifting from that perspective. It's going out and doing the crunch. Depending on the level of quantity of transactions and data that you have in your system, you may have this running as a job queue or as a NAS job overnight, just because it may take an hour or two for it to run. It does create a complete MRP system, so it's going to crunch through everything. If you don't have a lot of data in the system, you might be able to run it during the day. This is going to pull some pretty heavy calculations together, so think about that as you run it. If you don't know how to set jobs up, you can certainly do that from get with your reseller, and they can help you with that. The other thing that the planning worksheet will do for you is simply saves you the time of creating work orders and purchase orders in the system. So it's going to come up and give you a nice list of saying, here's all the POs I think you need to make and change. Here's, you can select and decide which ones you want to make. You can group them by vendor. You can do all these nice things and then tell it just carry out those action messages and it'll create them. Now when we do that, and we'll do a couple of examples, you can elect to decide how you want the POs to go into the system. Do I want them to go in and just automatically release? Generate my PO, release it, take some automation, email them out to the vendors. I don't want to touch them past that. Or is it a case of you say, look, I want them to go in as open because I do want to review those. Maybe I want to make a change to the price. Maybe they're giving me a special discount this time. Other factors that may take you to wanting to review them item by item. The same as with work orders. You can send them in as planned, firm planned, or released. And most people that I work with find that they send them in as firm planned because it gives you the option to say, all right, I know I want these, and I want to send them in as firm planned, but I may not want to release them to the floor yet. So I'm going to look at that, or my scheduler in manufacturing, he's now got the work orders, he or she, and they can decide when they want to release them to the floor. If you make them planned, understand that the planning worksheet's just going to destroy those next time it comes through. So those are really kind of a memo, the planned version, and you need to keep that in mind. Planning worksheet's not really going to pay attention to those when it generates again, so even though you have a planned order, it's going to say, hey, you need to build these, because for its perspective, planned is just there, like I said, kind of as a memo figure. Again, it provides an easy mechanism for edits and deletions. So if it says you don't need that work order anymore, it's going to pop up and say cancel it. You just don't need to do it. And you can do them from that standpoint or your edits. And then a pretty easy method for viewing where your demand is coming from. If it comes up and tells you, look, for item X, you need 200, you want to know why. Maybe you need to be able to order track back and say, where's this order for 200 coming from? It can be coming from the way you have your items set up and the planning stipulations. It can be coming from a sales order demand or a purchase order or a production order demand. It can be coming from a combination of all those. But it does give you a pretty good picture as to why orders have been placed on the planning worksheet, and you're able to drill back and see what you actually have to deal with there. And then you can run it for small segments of the company. I've got a couple of customers that actually run multiple planning worksheets at night. They have different parameters for each one, so because they've segmented the duties of purchasing and production to different people inside their company. And so what they'll do is they'll run each of them their own copy of the worksheet and let people work with a smaller level of data, and they can focus then on what they're really trying to do along those lines. You can also run it and say, look, today I just want to work with item category 7. And so you work with item category 7. And when we actually go in and look at the planning worksheet and how we generate it, we'll take a look at the ability for you to segment that and look at it in smaller quantities or in smaller volumes of data. But the idea is you can slice and dice this pretty well. The other thing you can do is you can simply copy it out to an Excel spreadsheet and then slice and dice it any way from Sunday that you want to do it, simply because there's something that you want to do or a calculation, a specialty function that's just simply not in NAV, and you can take it from that perspective. So to get to planning worksheet is pretty simple. I just wanted to kind of show this on the screen. Now this is 2016, but you can see that you go into manufacturing, go into planning. Personally, I end up typing up planning worksheet in the search bar, I'm a big fan of the search bar for how I use NAV, and so frequently that's where I go to actually work with it. But manufacturing, planning, and then down here in planning worksheet. There are other worksheets that you can look at also. We won't cover them today, but there is an order planning worksheet that actually allows you to drill down into specific items and orders and see all the demand and why it's there. There's a requisition worksheet for purchasing. There's a subcontractor worksheet, so if you have routings and let's say that you manufacture a metal item and then it needs to go out for powder coating, you can create a worksheet for that subcontractor or all your subcontractors and be able to plan in more detail from there. The planning worksheet itself is going to look like this, at least in 2016. We'll talk about each of these buttons when we actually do the examples and show the product, but this is what you're going to see. I was talking with some people yesterday and they said, well, help us understand what the worksheet is. Is it something that's always there? What you need to think about in terms of worksheets in NAV is they are snapshots in time to be worked with and then thrown away. So really you're going to probably be generating this every day. You're going to want to say, you want the system to go, this is what I built yesterday, this is what I shipped out, and based on my new inventory levels, here's now what I need to do. So it's a tool to be used but then to be discarded and rebuilt the next day. Don't think of it as a static item that you're going to keep for 4 or 5 weeks. This truly is, snapshot in time type items. And if you can run, if you don't have a huge amount of data and you can run it during the day, you can run it as many times as you want. And you don't affect anything by deleting and adding and doing all those things to the worksheet. Once you actually carry out the action messages, which it's not showing well here, but we'll show it in the actual examples, that's when it starts to build purchase orders or work orders or transfer orders or makes adjustments. But until you actually tell it, look, carry out these action messages, it's viewable, it's editable, but it doesn't actually do anything until you really step up to the plate and tell it, this is what I want to do. There's a couple of screens that primarily affect how the planning worksheet is going to work. One of them is in the manufacturing setup. So if you go to the search bar and you type in manufacturing setup and go into the system administrator, you're going to see this screen. We won't look at numbering because that's simply the way you're going to number your purchase order or your production orders. The two key items here are planning warning and dynamic low-level code. And we're going to get to the next slide where it's going to be written out in detail, but I just kind of want to point these out. So planning warning is going to tell you when you run the planning worksheet, do I want to see warnings or not? Meaning, if an item's not set up properly, do I want to see that warning or do I just want to ignore it? I always tell people to turn it on because it's a good way for you to manage the cleanliness of your data and the proper setup. The other is dynamic low-level code. What this is really doing is it's saying, look, I'm going to go to the lowest level all the way down the bill of materials to the lowest level inside that. So if I have 3 levels in my BOM, I want to get all the way down there and then come up with the items that I need to either manufacture as subcomponents or purchase to go into the product itself. If you don't click this and turn it on, you can have issues with demand not showing up simply because it's buried fairly far down into a BOM. If you use forecasting, then this is your default forecast. Obviously, I've got 2015 on here. If I had a forecast in there for 2016 and I was running my demo items in 2016, that would be my forecast, and I would have it pick that up. The way that forecasting works in planning is it will look at, okay, next month I have, for this item, I need 300. And as my demand, my actual true demand from sales orders or requirements for subassemblies starts coming in, it starts eating away at that 300. It doesn't add to it. It doesn't say, look, I got true demand for 150 and I got a forecast for 300, so I need 450. It's going to continue to say I need 300 until it exceeds 300. And then it's going to simply say, well, I need another 15, I need another 20, because I'm over my forecast. So if your business allows you to forecast that, if you want to forecast, you can use that as a pointer towards how do I want the system to tell me what to manufacture. And if you go into forecasting, you can set your forecast up on a monthly or a weekly basis, or larger time slices or smaller. And you can have the system pull in that information. You can also tell it to exclude it. Look, I don't want forecasts because we're too volatile. We're not going to try to do that. One thing I would tell you about is when you put a monthly forecast in there, it's going to front end load it in the month. So it's going to assume that you need it all on the first day. That causes problems for people. So you want to kind of take a look at it and decide how that forecast needs to go into the system. If I have default safety lead times, this is basically kind of a buffer for how long do I want to wait before I warn somebody that I haven't received something. So it may be that in general, if I get my product in within 2 or 3 days of what my expected receipt date is, I'm okay. Don't give me warnings that I need to adjust the PO or I need to change the required date. Let me have a value in here. Now, in this case, I'm kind of expecting it to be the day it is, so I've got 1 day or blank. But you could say, no, I want to set this to 3 days in general. These fields here are for the general company. They are not item specific. You have the same fields on the item card itself, and those can override what is in here. So if I have a default safety lead time of 0 in an item, it's going to override let's say I had this at 3 days, it would override that. If I have it blank on my card, it's going to take whatever the default is for manufacturing. So, it's a way of saying I want to adjust specific items, but I don't, in general, I don't want them all to deal with that. Do I normally want to see the MPS and the MRP both at the same time? And basically what that's saying is, look, I want to see all the top-level production, and I want to see all the needs from that top-level production. So drill all the way down through it and tell me everything I need. In some cases, people just want to see what's my top-level production or my subassembly. I don't care about all the other detail below it. Most times I see people running this with this checked on and taking them all. Components at location. Do I want to, based on where the order's coming from, look at the components that are in that particular stock keeping unit for that location? Normally this is blank, but if you have a stock keeping unit set up for an item, the planning worksheet, if it's working in that location, will look at the stock keeping unit first. So that will override what's in the item master card. The fields are the same, but it allows you to set up different stock keeping units with different requirements for the same item. And we'll take a look at one when we get in there and talk a little more in detail about that. But again, that's kind of a way of divvying up the requirements. And then a dampening period is really a way of kind of taking out a lot of white noise that happens in these sheets. Because if you don't have any dampening periods in there, you can get a lot of messages coming back at you saying, look, I know you got an order that's going to run tomorrow, but I got to have another one. And because the order slid slightly, it's not that I need it, it's just the date slid by a day. I don't necessarily need to know that. I'm okay, my quantity's okay. Maybe unless the change is outside a 5-day period, I don't need to know about it. So don't talk to me unless it's greater than 5 days. And so in that case, I would put a 5D in here, and it would just kind of calm down all the data that I'm having to see. The same with quantity. I could say, look, if the change is not, greater than 50, I don't care. Don't bother me with that particular change. So it just kind of helps you manage the windows of time, the windows of quantity, the number of messages you're going to get. So here's kind of a detail of what we just talked about. I'm not going to go through it all again, but I did want to be able to list it for you so that if anybody pulls down the presentation, you'll be able to see what we talked about. I would tell you too that most of this is in the book that I'm going to recommend that you buy. At the end, this book is not made by us. We don't get a cut for it or anything like that. I just think it's one of the better manufacturing books and planning books out on the market. So we've got the same thing with the item card. And this is just the planning fast tab. I'm not going to go through the replenishment fast tab because there's other features there. This is the one that really is going to affect planning. And if you've ever just spent time playing with this one, you'll note that, you know, if I change my reorder policy, different fields open up and different ones gray out. And that's a matter of saying, look, in this case, if I'm lot for lot, I can work with the dampening period, I can work with the safety lead times, quantities. I can tell it also, look, when I manufacture that, take a look out over maybe 2 weeks. Maybe every time I make this product, I want to look out 2 weeks and pull them all together. I don't want 5 work orders of 10 each. I want 1 work order of 50. I don't want 3 POs of 7, 9, and 1. I want 1 PO of 17. And so you can set that time period in here by item to help you really manage what you're dealing with in terms of data. Again, kind of taking out the white noise. And you don't want to necessarily issue POs, 3 POs within a week of each other. You do want to pull them together. And the same with rescheduling period. It could say, look out, always look out 2 weeks, and if I've got multiples, orders or POs, tell me that I need to reschedule them so that I can pull it together. If I'm on one of the other reorder policies, I may see reorder points, reorder quantities, maximum inventory. In this case, what it's saying is basically, look, I don't care about, necessarily care as much about your demand. I'm going to tell you when your reorder, when you hit an inventory level of, let's say it's 0 here, then I want you to reorder a quantity of 100, plus whatever other demand is driving it over that 100. So, this is the reorder quantity I want. If I got 50 here, I'm going to order at least 100, maybe 150, depending on what my total numbers are. Your order modifiers are the same way. What's my maximum order I can order, my order quantity? If I say, look, it's 500, then probably what I'm doing is I'm at the fixed reorder quantity as my reorder policy here, and I'm saying never buy more than 1,000. I don't want more than 1,000 at any given time, but never buy less than 300. So I could have 300 here, I could have 1,000 there, and you need to buy them in multiples of 30. So that's the way the purchase orders would be generated. And again, based on what you pick here, these are going to change. They're going to gray out, they're going to open up, and you're going to be able to set these. The reason this is important, and the reason I stress it so hard, is that this is where planning is going to look first. It's going to look here and go, what do I need to do? And every time I come across this item, what do I need to do? And these are the numbers, these are the settings that are going to drive the results of what you're going to get. So if you're not paying attention in what you got here, you're going to start seeing really strange numbers. It's going to start coming up and saying, you've got a sales order demand of 2 and you have to buy 200. And everybody's going to look at it and go, why in the world would I buy an extra 198? Well, chances are you got a reorder quantity of 200 in there. And it's saying, look, every time you buy, you got to buy 200. So the planning worksheet will help you find those changes, but it's important that this screen is set up correctly. If you miss this one, you're going to start having a problem. The other field I want to talk about is the order tracking policy. When we get into the planning worksheet, you're going to see that you have the ability to track back and see all the action messages for why a certain item may have come up and what it is. If you leave this blank or you set tracking only, all you're going to see is the reasons why it wants me to buy it. it may or may not give me all the other action message information and all the other detail. Personally, when I've used this, I've found this more than adequate. Other people may say, no, I want to see the errors, I want to see the tracking entries, I want to see more information. So one of the things that I tell people is, A, you should have a test or a dev system in addition to your production nav. That's where you can go, make these changes, run planning worksheet, and see how it comes up and how these affect. Your training that you can get from your vendor or your reseller is huge and good. You know, the information you can get off of NAVUG is good, but you need to be able to go in and play. And that's where setting these, rerunning the worksheet, seeing what it does, makes a big deal. So again, we looked at those fields. I put them in writing on this screen to kind of give you a picture of what it does. Take a hard look at reorder policy. A lot of stuff is lot for lot or order, you know, because it's a one-to-one relationship. Maximum quantity, I mean, you may say, look, I always want to have X amount of inventory on hand. I've got a company that you know, uses a lot of lead. They know how much they want in the creation of their product. This is a good field for them because they say, look, I always want trucks coming in and I want to be able to be at this point. So it can vary from item to item, and that's what I think people sometimes forget, is that the planning worksheet focuses on the item, not the company. While it's drawing demand from all across the company, it really is looking at the items itself and each one of them calculating independently. So you can better manage the granularity of your products and your information if you remember that I can set this on an item-by-item basis, so it gives me the maximum flexibility in both cases. We talked about order modifiers and reorder points. So, you know, again, all this stuff is out on the web. It's in the book. Happy to send anybody that wants a copy of this this simple PowerPoint to you. But this is basic information that you can look at to start to build your information. So I'm going to go into NAV now. And again, we're in 2016. Not going to go into the item or the manufacturing setup, but I'm going to go into planning worksheet. So I hop up here, tell it I want to go into my planning worksheet. I happen to have one in here already, but I'm going to show you what we discussed. So, you know, we'll look through here real quick, but if I want to just take out my entire worksheet and rebuild it, I can click on this little button up, or the button up there, hit delete. It says, are you sure you want to take out all the lines you selected? You say yes, and it's going to go through and clear all my lines for me. Again, I'm not hurting anything here because the information was given to me in a point of time, and so it really doesn't matter from that perspective. So now I want to recalculate my spreadsheet. I want my MPS and MRP both. I can set a series of starting and ending dates, so it's like, look, I know I want demand, but I only really am interested in demand for that relatively short period of time. I don't really care about the rest of the year right now, so stop on demand, on sales orders, that type of thing. Stop on 8/31, and don't look prior to 7/25. So if I've got old stuff, I don't care about it. You know, I'm dealing with it in another way. This is the error I want to do. Stop and show first error. I'd recommend you leave this off, because what can happen is if you have 14 errors, it stops. And you have to fix that one, and then go back and run it again. And then it stops at the next one. You have to keep rerunning it until you get them all fixed. My preference is let it run, bypass the errors, and then you'll get to see them. And you can certainly work with them from that standpoint. We talked about forecast, so here's where I would choose my forecast. And I would tell it, look, I don't want to see anything prior to 7/1 or 7/25. That's fine. And any parameters that I get exceptions for, I want to see those. I want to manage them, but I want to see them also. Down here is where I can adjust at an item level for information. So if I want to say, look, I only want to see information from, you know, my Elkhart warehouse, then I could select that, and when I run this, it's going to focus strictly on the Elkhart warehouse. It's not going to look at anything else. If I leave it open, standard nav stuff, then it's going to look at all locations, blank or filled in. I can do this for a specific item. Basically all the fields you get on the item card. Frequently when we show this, we'll do it for an item category, so it kind of cuts down on the sheer volume of data we get. And again, this is standard nav filtering capabilities. So I'm going to hit OK here, and it's going to go out. It's going to start at the lowest level code and then work its way up from that standpoint. And it is going through and calculating based on my item settings and my sales order demand, my purchase orders that are there, my production orders, any information. Now this is quick because I don't have a lot of data. This may take a few hours to run for somebody who has a lot of data in their system, and that's why frequently people run it at night. Now what it's telling me here is, hey, you got 11 items that I couldn't plan. There's something wrong with them. And as I spoke earlier, I like seeing this because this tells me I've got some cleaning of my data I need to take care of. I got a reorder policy that's wrong here. If I've got a reorder policy for fixed reorder, but my reorder quantity is 0, I can't do that because theoretically I would never reorder it. So there should be a value in there. If my reorder point's 5, but I don't have a maximum inventory, I should have something in here. Here's a bill of materials that's not certified. I can't calculate demand on that if it's not certified, but somebody needs it. I either need it for a sales order or it's a subassembly for another production order, but I need to do something with it, and I can't because we don't have it certified. So this gives you basically a really nice daily picture of issues within your item data that you can go fix. You're not hunting and picking and looking around for this stuff. They kind of lay it out on a silver platter here. So from my perspective, I think this is a really nice feature that you can work with. Over here then, now this is your work plan. And you can see that I have a lot of attentions and emergencies because I got, frankly, a lot of old data in here. Or if I've got nothing in the warning, excuse me, it's just telling me, look, you just need to build a purchase order. Now, you will notice, too, that it automatically marks action messages for new things that I need to do. In this case, I just need to build that. I need to build that purchase order. So that action message is already checked. I can have it come up. I could have set it so it just checked all the action messages, and then I'd have to uncheck what I didn't want. Or I can have it not check any of them, and I go through and select them. But when I tell it to carry this out, it's going to build a purchase order for that. If I want to see what my problems are, I can click on that, and it's going to say, hey, you're trying to start this before the work date. So you're not going to be able to take care of it. You've also got a production order that's already released on this, so you need to deal with those two things. This is an emergency one, so what do I need to deal with in terms of what my problem is? Well, I don't have enough inventory. You got to deal with this immediately or you're going to be in trouble. So those messages help your planner figure out what he needs to be looking at. I can adjust these quantities. So if I say, look, I want to go ahead and build this PO, but I actually want 10, I can put 10 in there. And so now it's going to build a PO for vendor 00040 for 10 as opposed to the others. You'll also notice over here in the untracked planning entries, this is where the information is coming from. So if we go to, and I've got an item I can look at here. Let me find 110. So I want to see what's really driving this. I can kind of glance over here and look at it. I can also go in, oh, that's the wrong item. I apologize. Let me go to this filter. There we go. So now, when I go and look and say, what's really creating this demand, here's where it's all coming from. I got a planning component of 2 I need. Well, that's coming from a production order that I'm going to need that's firm plan, which is coming from these 2 sales orders. And then I got another production order that's coming out of there. So I'm able to quantify why the system is asking me for that information. And if I really want to see, I can go in and say, look, I want to show and see exactly what sales order this is coming from. And so if I click on that, it allows me to drill all the way back into the sales order, see the line that it's indeed coming from a touring bike. I can open up and see the general information, who it's sold to, that type of thing. So it gives the planner, it gives the production people a little more information as to what they're looking for. And I think I just shut my planning worksheet off. Sorry. Bring that back. A couple of other things that this does is if you're wanting to see your components, and this is a production item, because you can see it's telling me I've got to deal with a production order, I can go up here and say, okay, well, show me what else is coming from here. And it's going to throw up your bill of material for you. And this is just kind of standard BOM items, but anything else that I'm going to need, it's telling me what I've got. I can also look at my routings. Where is it going? What machine centers is it going through? Maybe maybe I'm doing double duty as both the generator of the production orders and the scheduler. Well, I want to see where this thing's going to end up so I know what I have to do in terms of managing it. Sorry. So you can also look at that error log again if you want to. You can certainly click on the item and drill into the item itself. Here, we talked about what's driving the planning. I can see that down here as a quick thing to take a look at, and it gives you a nice flexibility. I can change the action message, so I can say, look, I don't want a new one. I just want you to change a quantity on an existing one, and I'm going to adjust the quantity to deal with that. If I want to carry out action messages and I want to tell it to build, I can certainly, anything that I have checked here, I can certainly take care of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to rerun this for a specific location so I can filter out some of the data and we can get a little bit better picture of it. So we'll let that clear, and then I'm going to run it for my Elkhart location. So that I get a cleaner look. And assuming that I did everything correctly, it should come up with much fewer items. And it did. So these are all new purchase orders, new items I need. You can see the vendors out here to the side. I don't want, so what do I want to do? Let me create, tell you what, I'm going to create a production order of this one. There we go. Just a second here, folks. So I'm going to create this purchase order and this production order. We'll get rid of the others. Now I could simply delete the lines if I wanted to, if I didn't want to uncheck all this. Or I can do what I'm doing, which is simply unchecking them. So I'm going to jot those two numbers down. So it's 1120 and 1150. 87716. Okay. So this PO should come up and this purchase order should come up. So when I tell it to carry out my action messages, now I have some options. What way do I want my purchase orders, my production orders to come in? Planned, firm planned, or firm planned and print it. Basically, I want to be able to send it out to the floor. I'm going to firm plan it. And then I can either make my production orders, I can make them and basically print them and have them ready to release, or I can copy them to a requisition worksheet so somebody else can work on it. Oops, sorry. If I leave it blank, I'm not going to do anything. So I'm going to just leave these two as they are. I'm going to say, okay, here. It should go out and create those two things for me. Refreshes my screen, now they're gone. If I run this again, those two are not going to show up because I've already generated them once. So if I go in here and I look at my purchase orders, and get the vendors 0158776. There's my one that I just built. And so, oops, I'm going to go take a look at it. My item is in here, so it should be a 1120, quantity of 200. I'm set to go. I can release this and go and do my thing. I can delete it. If I delete it, it's going to show back up on the planning worksheet next time I run it. So it saved me a step. You can do some automation here where it just automatically creates those for you so that you don't have to even go into that point. Again, if you're comfortable enough that that you can do that. If I go into manufacturing, and I go into execution and my firm planned orders, I should have an order at the bottom for this front hub, 1150. That's the order I generated through the system. So it allows me to take care of those things without having to mess with them. Again, if I would rerun this again now, those would stay off and I would be ready to go. Let's see, what else? So if I tell it to go get the action messages, what it's going to do is it's going to go out and look for only items that I have set up to show tracking changes, and it's going to come back and show me a list of those that I can work with. I can refresh my planning lines, so maybe I want it to go out and say anything that anybody's been working with through the day, just go back and refresh them. Don't do the whole shooting match. You know, don't take 2 hours, but go out and just kind of specifically look at the items that we've worked with, that we've got action messages on from that standpoint. Or I can calculate the net change. Again, go out, find the information for me, come back and just show me my changes based on information that's been happening through the day. It's a faster way for the system to give you a new plan. It is not it does not replace running it from scratch each day, but it does give people the ability in the middle of the day to go out and kind of get an adjusted snapshot, if you will. So you know, the planning worksheet is strong. It's a good tool for us to be able to work from there. So let me pop my slideshow back open. So you know, the main features I want you to take away from this are, you know, it's got some automation built in. It saves you time and effort. And it certainly allows you to, you know, to utilize the automation that's built in there. Don't forget, it utilizes stock keeping units before it utilizes the item card. So if I have a stock keeping unit for a location, the planning parameters that are set up in the stock keeping unit, that's where it's going to look first. If there's nothing there, if that stock keeping unit record does not exist, then it'll take the planning parameters from the item master card. You know, you get a nice visual representation by order tracking to see where the demand and requirements are coming from. You can run it in multiple ways, filter it for buyers, filter it for item categories, certainly slice and dice it to your heart's content. Normally, companies are going to run it at night. It's a job. They put it in the job queue and just let it run simply because most people aren't working on the system at night. You know, again, I kind of doubled up there. Easy tracking of demand. Where's it coming from? What are we working for? And then your drill down capabilities. You know, double clicking on a line, going in, looking at the sales orders, looking at the production documents, seeing what that information is and how it works from that perspective. So that's a fairly fast, really high-level view of our planning worksheet, what it does and why I think if you're not using it, you should be. If you are using it, maybe you need to take another look at it and see if you're using it in all the ways that you can. Manufacturing with Dynamics NAV is the name of a book that we keep in-house. I've got copies of it. If you go to this website, you can purchase it from there. It is over in Europe, so there's the whole funds transfer stuff, but you can buy a copy from them. If for some reason you can't get a copy, let us know, and we will certainly be happy to help you with that. One last thing before I take questions. If you haven't heard about Summit this year, if you're not planning on going, please reconsider. Look it up online. NAVUG Summit is the best conference to go to for users. It's a user summit about users, put on by users. A lot of sessions are done by users. it's like the NAVA website. You know, if you got questions, your reseller's a great resource, Microsoft's a great resource, but the best resources in the world are people that use the software day in and day out. That's the people that are going to be at Summit. It's in Orlando this year. It's in October. Highly recommend you take a look at it. Highly recommend you convince ownership or CEOs that it's worth at least one or two people going to. You will more than get your money's worth just on information that you can get from other users, and make some contacts with those users that are important. With that, thank you for your time. We've got a little time to take some questions, I believe. So, Abby, are there any questions?
We do have a few, Alan.
Okay.
Our first question, how often should the planning worksheet be run?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. Really, in my opinion, you run it daily. And again, I would run that at night. I think a job queue can be set up pretty simply to run that, and that will give you the best information that's ready for you bright and early that morning.
Okay. Our next question, can multiple versions be run for different people?
Yeah. Actually, let me go back to... So I can set this up. I only have one, but I could set this up to have different journals, and then those have different conditions and filters. And when I run it in a job queue, or I run it as I can choose a different batch, create a different one, and use it from there. So we can certainly set up planning worksheets to run it in different ways for different people.
Our next question, on 2009 version, planning worksheet is not allowed to run MPS and MRP both. Will that be a problem?
You'd have to see a little more of what you're doing. I wouldn't think so. You will have to. I mean, you gotta run them. Let me think through that. So, I would think if you're running the MPS, you should be okay, because that should give you your drill down. MRP would be your best option. That one is going to drill all the way into it. I would, send me an email and let me follow up on that one a little bit. I'm not that familiar as I should be with 2009, but I do have a compatriot who can answer exactly what you may run into in terms of seeing all your demand. But if you shoot us an email, we'll certainly get back to you on that one within a few days.
Okay, great. Our next question, can the worksheet be exported to Excel and then re-imported?
Yeah, so actually that one is a pretty simple process. Whoops. So if you highlight the row or rows that you want, copy the rows, and have Excel open here. Paste it in there. Now I can slice and dice to my heart's content here, change whatever I want. Then I could literally go in and delete this one, and paste my new one in. And as long as you don't rearrange, you got to leave the columns alone. So don't rearrange your columns, but put it in there, then you'll be able to post from there. Some people do that, not a lot, but occasionally people have an extra set of calculations they want to do, something unique to their industry, and so they'll work at it from there. Other questions?
That looks like all of the questions I have at the moment, Alan. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them into the question box. And of course, just a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be up on our website later this afternoon, so you can check that out at innovia.com. And Alan, that looks like the end of the questions.
All right, folks, thank you very much for your time. Again, take a hard look at Summit. You will not be disappointed, and feel free to contact us with anything else you might be interested in. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Alan, and thanks everyone. We'll see you at our next webinar.